One thing that really brings EU4 players together is our shared love for history. Now, some of you might know that EU4's 1444 start date might not be the most historically accurate, let's face it, there are a lot of inaccuracies really. That being said though, the modding community has made an absolutely astonishing amount of mods that change all of that, make the game a lot more immersive, a lot more historically accurate, and just a lot more fun. And that's why today we're going to be checking out Voltaire's Nightmare, one of the most well-established and most respected mods in the EU4 community, and one of my personal favorite mods since it has a ton of replayability and it's just insanely immersive. If we get 5,000 likes, I'm gonna do another video on Antebellum and their most recent update that sets a new standard for the EU4 modding community. And hey, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. I'm trying to build up an army of absolute Chad Lord map gamers and conquer the world. Wait, no, who said that? No, we're totally not, we're not doing that. Now you probably noticed that the map is a lot smaller. It doesn't include the entirety of the world. It only includes basically Europe, North Africa, most of the Russian steppes here, and parts of Iran. However, it is impassable terrain right now. It's not actually playable in that area for the time being at least. That being said though, if we zoom in, you will quickly realize that this map is actually bigger than the EU4 map. Even though it only has Europe, it's so well detailed that it's freaking bigger than the EU4 map. I mean, what? The amount of provinces is just absolutely insane in this mod, and just brings a completely new style of playing this game as consequence. Now, the first start date is when the Great Schism happened. If you don't know what the Great Schism is, it's the moment when the Catholic and the Orthodox Church basically split apart. The different dogmas between Catholicism and Orthodoxy became, well, kind of official, right? And the divide between East and West Europe definitely took a brand new turn. In 1054, however, most of Anatolia was Orthodox, with some Miaphysites, Iconoclasts, and other types of Christian denominations around too. We have some Nestorians around too, and of course the Sunnis in the south, which of course, as you know, will spread into the Anatolian Peninsula after the Battle of Manzikert, which occurred just a few years later. An important date in all of history, since it is the moment when the Seljuk Turks defeated the Byzantines at the Battle of Manzikert, assuring their entrance into Anatolia, which would later give birth to the multiple Turkic Beyliks, which in turn would give birth to the Ottoman Beylik, which became the Ottoman Empire and just conquered pretty much the entirety of the Byzantines and more, becoming what some would call the last Muslim Caliphate, right? You actually can track pretty much all of that from the start dates. We have all the way into 1821. So we go 1054 with the Great Schism. The First Crusade is an option as well, so we can switch on over to 1099. And as you can see here, the world's already very different. The Seljuks managed to make their way after the Battle of Manzikert into Anatolia. We have the Sultanate of Rum, the Danishmends, Erzikans, and a lot of other various smaller Turkic entities around this area. Culturally speaking, there you go. They've already settled most of central Anatolia. This is a little bit debatable though. Obviously they did, but this is only like 30-40 years after. So in 30-40 years, I would not expect them to be this big of a chunk of Anatolia though, to be fair. Might be wrong, who knows. The process of the Turks replacing the Greeks in the Anatolian Peninsula lasted around 700 years until, you know, we got modern Turkey, which is predominantly Turks and Kurds in the Anatolian Peninsula, right? With still small pockets of Greeks, Armenians, and so on. My favorite part about this mod is that you can actually track a little bit of what happened historically in Europe and around Europe by just going through the bookmarks, because they've actually done something that the base game doesn't even do. They've properly scripted in the historical dates for the entirety of the early bit of the campaign, so you don't have the same situation like in EU4 when you click 1821 and you go back and you get cores all over the place, or you just click 1821 and the map is just plain out not accurate because Paradox didn't actually update the rest of the start dates after they've started releasing most of the most recent DLCs, and they don't plan to update them. That's why in EU5 we only have 2 start dates, by contrast to EU4, right? Now with the 1099 date, we do have the Duchy of Antioch and the County of Edessa, the first Crusader nations in the area. Later on, this would lead to the Kingdom of Jerusalem being established. Let's see if we see that by, there you go. We do see 1 year later, we have Jerusalem, Hebron, Ramla, and a lot of the other tributary, basically, states of the Jerusalemites. Can I call them Jerusalemites? What would you even call them? I guess it's Jerusalemites, right? What do you guys think? What would the Crusader state of Jerusalem, what would they call themselves? Just to prove that they did script all of this pretty well, I'm gonna back out a few years. There you go. Only 10 years prior, before the Crusades even happened, most of Anatolia was a part of the Sultanate of Rum, which kicked out the Byzantines. Now, when the Crusaders arrived in Constantinople, the Byzantine Emperor made them promise that they will return every single province that was stolen by the Sultanate of Rum back to Byzantium and not keep it for themselves. The Crusaders did do this. As they started progressing into Anatolia, they gave back most of the cities to the Byzantines, and of course the Byzantines helped out. They brought some of their units as well, and they took back and garrisoned all of these areas. But when they arrived to the Holy Lands, Bohemond and gang decided that, yo, hold up a second here, boys. Maybe we should just make our own Catholic states, because remember, in 1054, the Great Schism made a massive divide between the Orthodox and the Catholics, which wasn't as prevalent in 1099 as you would imagine, but still was in its incipient phase. Realistically speaking, people really started noticing the difference between Catholics and Orthodox. I mean, the common people starting noticing that difference way later. I'm actually talking about hundreds of years later. I also like seeing the pre-Wallachia, pre-Moldova states over in the Wallachian bits. This is, by the way, made up because there's no actual proper records on the names of the states prior to Wallachia and Moldova. There are some maps that show certain states, but they're not necessarily states. They're more like this guy's land and this guy's land. Like Jelu, Menumorut, and all these people, they had areas that they're kind of like warlord states, sort of. I don't know how to even express it in English. Whatever the case, it's definitely not what they call themselves. That is for sure. 1187 marks the Battle of Hattin. We guys probably, you likely know about this battle from the Kingdom of Heaven movie, where the Jerusalemite army got its ass crushed and Salahuddin basically wiped out Jerusalem. If we scroll up 1 more year, there you go, almost nothing left of Jerusalem. And if we go a few more years, they pretty much just get completely stomped out. Whatever's left is basically by the coastline, and subsequent crusades didn't really manage to do much. Eventually everything did fall under Islamic control. Taking a little bit of a look at the HRE, because let's face it, the main theme of this mod is the HRE. It started out as a way of showing a very historical, accurate map of all of the HRE, right? Because reality is there were hundreds of entities within the Holy Roman Empire, not just 50 plus, 70 plus that we have in the base EU4, right? And the divide between them was massive as well. Like, for example, if we click over on mines, if I can actually find it, there you go. Look how many lands they had and how separate all of these provinces were from one another. This just shows the HRE was essentially an entity ruled by various people, and these countries, as we call them, well, we technically don't call them countries, whatever, duchies, counties, whatever they were simply just the lands belonging to a specific dynasty. It's kind of like say Bill Gates buying up all the farmlands in the US, and then you click on the US and you see that every single different piece of land is owned by a different corporation, be it Bill Gates Corporation or some other rich dude's corporation, and you're working a 9-to-5 job with the prospect of maybe paying off your bank loan for your house in the next 50 years, whilst they make that much money in probably seconds. I'm not saying the game is rigged, guys. I'm not saying it's rigged. I'm just making a comparison between modern times and HRE land distribution. It's oddly similar. Let's click a little bit on the 1444 start date, and let's actually get in the game itself, because we are already a few minutes into the video and we haven't even actually entered the game. Hey, I like to talk a lot about these things, okay? Because I'm actually passionate about history and also like this mod, so I want to give it a proper review here, make you guys really interested in it. If you haven't played Voltaire's Nightmare, you're missing out, and I really mean it. I'll leave a link to the mod in the description, but it's just quite easy to go to the workshop and just type Voltaire's Nightmare, right? Now, starting from the western bits, you realize that France is in fact very different. Look at that. The actual land owned by the crown is significantly smaller compared to the amount of duchies and counties that we have. This is accurate. This is super accurate. The French crown in 1444 was not as consolidated, and the various lords owned their lands and basically just pay their dues to the king. But that being said, Monsieur Charles VII de Valois is actually known as being one of the kings that started consolidating the power of France over to the crown, taking it away from the nobility, and obviously also the guy that kicked out the English from here, leaving them with pretty much just Calais and a few other parts in the south, I guess. Take note, one thing that the mod doesn't display, and I don't think it's actually possible because of the basic mechanics of the game itself, is the fact that the Duchy of Burgundy was a part of both the HRE and France. Sure, Monsieur Philippe III de Bourgogne is in fact the leader of Burgundy, but he was both a count in the HRE and a duke in the Kingdom of France. So the lands that were essentially a part of France belonged to the French crown, or were subject to the French crown. He was duke of those lands, and he was also count of the lands of Burgundy that belonged to the HRE. It's just weird feudal ways, but it is what it is. It makes sense if you do think about it, since at origins, after Charlemagne, his empire was divided in three, and East Francia became the HRE as we know it today. Well, as we knew it back then. Germany, as we know it today, is the result of East Francia, and the West Francia became France, and Lotharingia, the central part between the two, was essentially split and ate up by the two Francias. This is why having, you know, partition succession is not a good idea. You should get rid of that if you play CK3, you know, the sooner the better. Or just sail off your heirs in the sea and kill them off so you don't... What am I even talking about CK3 for here? I really do wish that the Bulgarians actually had this much land in 1444, but the truth is that in 1444 pretty much everything was conquered by the Ottomans. The fortress of Lovech actually was still not conquered by them, but they did conquer it a couple of years later. So yeah, this would be accurate to be there, but only Lovech. Pleven was most definitely conquered by the Turks by 1444. Byzantium is fairly accurate though. They did have the entire coastline here, unlike what most people would imagine, because I think a lot of people would imagine Byzantium to just have the city of Byzantium, which is not really the case. They did have some islands around as well, like the island of Limnos, Imbros, Skiros, and Shkubabidbos, which is totally not an island I just invented on the spot. Here's something I don't agree with though. Morea was a despotate, this is true, but it was a despotate that owed its vassalage to the Byzantines. So after the Byzantines lost Constantinople in 1453, the last vestiges of the Eastern Roman Empire were actually in Morea, and technically the empire didn't fall in 1453 because this was still technically a part of it, right? Debatable, I don't know, man. I'd say we need to do a little bit more digging in that area, right? Now, as you can imagine, they also added mission trees to Voltaire's Nightmare. And sure, some of these don't have insane mission trees like the Ottomans. It's not really as big as the base default one, but it's better than no mission tree, right? And then if we go to the HRE, that's when things come to play, because look how massive the mission tree is here. We got this thing here, which is basically the generic one that most nations have in this area. And then we also have the DLC mission tree, which is exactly the same with small differences and with some extra added missions like the Eastern Frontier, Markish Colonist into Silesia, Germanized Silesia. All of this is added by the mod. Actually, I'm just realizing I'm wrong. This is completely different from the DLC mission tree. Is this an updated version or just never realized? I think this might be an updated version. The last time I played Voltaire's Nightmare, I don't remember seeing this, so I'm positively impressed with seeing this now. All of these missions are different. All of them, even the icons are really well made for that matter. I have to say, a lot of love went into this mod. I might even give Brandenburg another play. I did a playthrough as Brandenburg with Voltaire's Nightmare, and I had a ton of fun doing it. Since you guys probably don't know this about me, but I do enjoy a good Brandenburg run, especially as Voltaire Nightmare Brandenburg, which, let's face it, has a lot more than the provinces than the base Brandenburg. We got 93 development, but we got 22 provinces, boys. Sure, most of them are 4, 3 development and so on, but it's not about the development. It's about the motion of the the ocean. Some new decisions in there as well, like revoke Hanseatic privileges, form the North German Confederation. What? Okay, that is actually cool to see. It enables total Prussian militarization ability, Prussian monarchy tier 1 government reform, country changes to Norddeutscher Bund, which I guess means North German Confederation, right? You know how I know that? Well, that's because I know the German army is the Bundeswehr, which is the Confederate forces or something, right? They also added a ton of new trade goods. So we have fruits over here, or vegetables better yet, beer, which is voted best trade good by 9 out of 10 Germans, which is also why most of Germany is full of beer compared to the rest of the world. Surprisingly, there is no beer in Arabia. I wonder why. I wonder why. Oh, this is new too. We have pigs as a trade good now. Local tax modifier. Wow. Are these pigs or are these magistrates? That's the real question. Why are we getting tax modifier here? I mean, I guess it's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? The money maker is not gold though. It is silver, and one country that disposes of a lot of silver is Bohemia. Bohemia has got tons of silver. Holy mother. If we scroll out a little bit, most of the gold is in what will eventually become the Austro-Hungarian Empire, or the Austrian Empire really, with Castile also having sizable amounts of gold mines or silver mines. There's also some new estates like the Teutons estate, which apparently is known for their beer monopoly. Those scumbags, they're trying to hog all the beer, and they can also settle Templars, so you can hire Templar knights without the capital being in the Holy Lands. Ooh, interesting. So the Templar knights, I think, are a mercenary unit if I'm not mistaken. Guess I have to wait for 1 day or 1 month to get them available. Yup, there you go, boys. Templar Knightius. Let's see what kind of units they are. Oh wow, they inflict shock damage and cav combat ability plus 50. That is really good, really good. And it's 50-50 infantry cavalry. That is a huge deal right there. No general though is pretty disappointing, considering that it costs 3.04 ducats to maintain, which is pretty pricey. As you can imagine, because there's a lot of extra years, I think there's like roughly 400 years extra to the game, right? There are some new idea groups, such as the manufacturing ideas, the logistical ideas, and cultural ideas, which also come with their very own policies. So the game is quite well fleshed out when it comes to policies and just everything else. It's not like you're gonna have 400 years extra of playing EU4 and it's just filled with nothing. That's not how it goes, boys. Because we are basically at the middle of the timeline here. We have technology level 35, which means that I'm guessing the eastern bits are less technologically inclined. Yep, they are tech 34. Okay, that's not such a big difference actually. There's also some new buildings. So we have a little bit of a different disposition here. Government has the Watchman as the first building, then it gets upgraded to Courthouse and Town Hall. Production has the Artisan, Taxation as the Monument, and then the other ones as in the base game. We also have Miscellaneous, which is the road network, guilds, armories, ports, and also the Apothecary, as well as the Hospice, which lowers devastation, increases supply modifier. That's actually really good. I like the Hospice. We have colleges that get upgraded to universities. So what this tells me is that this mod also has a ton of potential to do role-playing stuff, be it role-playing multiplayers, or you can just play by itself in single player and just role-play something. Slowly build up your nation. Don't need to blob out. You can just play tall essentially and just create the ultimate behemoth. Let's check if there's any added new great monuments. There are actually quite a few from what I'm noticing here. We have the Kramer Buki, which offers trade efficiency plus 15 global. Holy mother, that's a lot. The Weimar Stadtkapelle, which offers idea cost minus 10%. The Wartburg Castle, which adds Wartburgs. You don't know what a Wartburg is? Well, maybe you're just not educated enough, okay? Come on! The Baroque residence and gardens here. The Stachlik Castle offers a merchant and caravan power. Roman monuments of Trier. Ooh, that's actually cool. Yeah, there's really a lot of monuments. Even in Italy, even in Spain or Castile, we have the Torre del Oro, which is basically translated the Tower of Gold. Unfortunately, it gives trade steering. It doesn't give gold. Where my gold at, Tower of Gold? I feel clickbaited, just like this thumbnail you did today, Ludi. Shut up, okay? You still watched. You liked the... Just hit that like button right now. You know, I'm surprised they actually didn't add the Sagrada Familia. Great project. I think that's pretty significant of the Catalonian bits of the world. I don't know. Just my particular opinion. Rocha Montana Mines. What? Oh boy, that's a little bit controversial, not gonna lie. So Rocha Montana is an area where there's a lot of gold. And basically what happened is in recent years, this was actually mined by the Romans. One of the reasons the Romans attacked Dacia was because there was a lot of gold mines and they wanted the gold, so they attacked and they started mining it. One of those areas is Rocha-Montana. Now, in modern times, the gold mines in Rocha-Montana have been sold by corrupt politicians to a Canadian mining conglomerate, which started using fracking with cyanide and shit, basically stuff that's really toxic for all the surrounding environment and surrounding people, because there's villages in that area, and there was a lot of protests that made them stop. It kind of died out a little bit, and now they restarted, and it's not even on the news because they clearly paid the right people off. But hey, it is what it is. Not gonna make a difference if I talk about it, that's for sure. Pretty funny how you know, we need a Canadian company to mine the gold, and they keep 90% of that, and only 10% goes to the government, and they only paid like insanely small amount of money to get that license by bribing corrupt politicians in the early 2000s, right? It do be like that in the world, boys. It do be like that in the world. Also, why is Kiev independent and allied to Lithuania? That is 0% accurate. Kiev was at best an autonomous province of Lithuania, as were the other parts here. They were not allies. That is not how it went at all. Sure, it was not super centralized Lithuania in 1444, but this was considered by Lithuanians their lands, be it as vassalage or integral lands with some degree of autonomy, but they were not independent and allied to Lithuania. 100% no. So that's just flat out inaccurate. I don't know if that's done because of recent events and the war in Ukraine. Probably is because of that, but that is not accurate historically at all. So I think if I have to give this mod some ratings, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 historically accurate rating, even though there are some things that are not accurate. Overall, it's done an amazing job at portraying the world as it was. A lot of time and work went into making this mod, and I think that especially for history enjoyers, it's a good baseline to see a little bit how, or to visualize a little bit how the world looked like back in the 11th century to 15th century and so on. If I was to give it a fun rating, I would give it a 10 out of 10. It is insanely fun. But if I was to give it a PC you need to actually play it modifier, I would give it a 3 out of 10, and I'm a little bit generous here because let me just exemplify. To put this into perspective, look how it looks like on speed 5 in 1444. That's me scrolling. I'm scrolling intensely right now. Look how... oh boy. Yep. It is quite a little bit laggy, boys. It's gotten a lot better since before, actually. I'll be honest, it's actually gotten a lot better, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10 when it comes to PC required to play it. But you gotta realize I've got a really good PC, 64 gigabytes of RAM, 3080, all that schnapp. So if it's like this for me, if you've got less than that, you probably will struggle with the mod. That being said, there is a second version of the mod, Voltaire's New Nightmare, that's a little bit more restricted to basically only the HRE, and runs a ton better as consequence, since it doesn't have the entire part of the world as we have in this one, and you would probably enjoy that a lot more since it's a little bit more fluid, and the game is basically the same with just a more restricted map. Also guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm trying to make a series where I highlight all the mods. I did a highlight on every single mod last year, and I want to do it again because a lot of these mods have changed, and I think that they deserve the highlight, and that you deserve to find out about them and just have fun playing them. So if you enjoyed this video, watch this awesome video up next. And I want to give a massive thank you to all of my patrons, channel members, and Twitch subscribers. I would not be able to do this without all your support.